Good evening and welcome to another edition of Wrestling Roundtable Radio. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. The number to call is 347-857-4647. If you're listening to us live, you're on blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Roundtable. If you're not listening to us live, you're either on iTunes or YouTube. Wherever you are, please comment, share, and rate. And I think any of us who are on the panel tonight, and I'll be bringing on the panelists in a little bit, we're scrambling to get on at the last second, but we did it for you, the fans. And right off the bat, I'm going to bring on Jay Aletto and Rodney LeCon. Hello, Jay.
What's happening, Eric? How you doing tonight?
Just trying to settle down. Just got home like 15 minutes ago. And Rodney, hello.
Hi, Eric. What's going on?
Well, not nearly as much as you, it seems. Congratulations on winning the ESPN Red Carpet Contest. You're going to be walking the aisle. The red carpet in Los Angeles coming up in July at the ESPYs. Congratulations.
Thanks, and I just want to thank everyone else who was out there voted for me. It's definitely going to be a big birthday present. And as a side note, my sister today, out of 300 girls, she was one out of 6 girls to make it to the New Jersey Nets dance team. So congratulations
Holy
to her. Yeah, it's sweet, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been a good week and a half for me, my brother, and my sister. And my brother Martin just got blue belt in jiu-jitsu last Saturday, so good for him, too.
Jeez, everything's going the LeConte's way this summer, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess luck is letting on our lap for once.
Part of your success in votes may have been drummed up by our audience, and that's what I wanted to focus on a little bit right at the beginning. I didn't want to turn it into a complete yay-us thing, but I did want to mention some things about the roundtable, because the last show we did, we talked a little bit about Pro Wrestling Respect, which is, of course, sponsored by the Wrestling Roundtable. All of us are involved in it, and we talked about what it's like to be working in pro wrestling, because some of us have worked in pro wrestling. I've been in it for a while now, and part of the idea of the roundtable was to bring everyone a little closer together, because I thought that the wrestling fans and the wrestlers seem to have some sort of weird relationship a lot of the time, where the wrestlers have this attitude about the fans, looking down their noses on them, all the marks and this and that, and I think that's pretty fucked up and stupid, because what I wanted to do with the show was bring people to the same table, bring them closer together. I didn't want to exclude any points of view per se. I wanted to bring people who had no experience in wrestling, people who had some experience in wrestling, and wrestlers, let's say, all together and exchange ideas, and that was one of the ideas at the beginning of the show. And one of the things that really struck me as well after the show last week was it was really nice to hear from some fans who had come to Pro Wrestling Respect, and with a lot of the things in Wrestling Roundtable in general, this was a community we were trying to bridge, and I like to harken back to the genesis of the Roundtable a few years ago, and there's actually a lot of factors that went into Roundtable starting, and one of the ways you like to put it, Rodney, is we just took our conversations that we were having ourselves in your room watching Raw or whatever and put it on the internet. You want to explain that?
Yeah, well, it'd be great because you and Lawrence would always come over to my house Monday nights, and even though we weren't too into the product at the time, there were some stuff I really liked. And anybody else, Eric, that knows you could tell you that seeing your reaction to shit that sucks, it makes the things just as funny. And sometimes we'd have debates about things that happen on Raw, and I think one of us said, hey, it'd be funny. Maybe Lawrence said something like, we should start these conversations, and then that's when you start bringing the idea of actually having a talk show. And it started off with me and Lawrence, and it just kept snowballing, and here we are.
Well, there was a lot of different factors that went into it, like some of the ones you mentioned, and when the idea came about, I'm a visionary, and I'm not trying to boast in that. I mean, in an artistic sense, I have a vision in my head, and I can hear it, I can see it, and it's just a matter of creating it. And it took a while, of course, to get there, and I think Pro Wrestling Respect as well is in that stage where we're just a few shows in, we're learning, and we're getting better every time, and Roundtable got like that, and now here we are on the radio version, and that was something else that cropped up a little later on. And one of the things that's an after effect of this, and of course it wasn't immediate, this was a lot of hard work. I put thousands of hours and dollars into this show. This is something I'm not even doing full time. And if you want to make it something, if you want to support the show in that sense, I suggest that if you see an ad, click it. Just bring up the stupid thing, hit X, put some money in our pocket. If you want to shop, please shop at our Amazon store. If you want to get anything WWE, TNA, UFC, whatever, do it through Amazon first. Or, of course, you can get the Wrestling Roundtable T-shirt or any Pro Wrestling Respect merchandise at ProWrestlingRespect.com. And I'm not trying to shill per se, but I'm just trying to say that there are ways to support the show. And one of the good aspects of this is I think, especially now, if you look at the radio, you look at YouTube, you look at all our different websites, this is really starting to become the community I had in mind. And I think other people on the show, other panelists, can attest to this, that, yeah, we wanted to put some unique thought and perspectives on there. And the great thing about the Roundtable is it brings fans from all sorts of backgrounds together, whether you've been watching just a few years, watching all your life. I would like to think that eventually maybe we could build this movement into something that could maybe bring about some positive change. Maybe we're not there quite yet, but we're doing all right, and I really enjoy interacting with our fans because that was the whole idea of the Roundtable, to bring everybody together and interact in different ways, whether it was in text, on YouTube, guest columns, message board here, taking calls and whatnot. But there's been a lot of great after effects of the Roundtable, and I want to bring on Chris Harris to talk about that. And hello, Chris.
Hey, yo.
So what's it like so far, your experience with the Roundtable? There's been some interesting experiences that have come about because of it.
Before we go on that, I just want to say congratulations to Rodney on winning that ESPN contest. That's pretty awesome, man. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty cool. You know, I've been recognized a couple times. You know, the first I got recognized at a TNA pay-per-view the three of us went to a couple of years ago. But I was waiting outside. Eric ran off somewhere, and like Rodney was in the bathroom or something. Some guy just came up to me and was like, "Hey, Chris from the Roundtable," and wasn't wearing a shirt or anything. I don't think it was just really cool. And I've been recognized a couple times at Ring of Honor shows. Specifically though, at Danielson and Nigel's last show, Tim and me were shooting a whole bunch of stuff for the website outside. We had our shirts on. Yeah, our blog. We had our shirts on, and a lot of people recognized us. You know, one guy was pretty drunk and like came up and like screaming like "Roundtable," and he actually got on. We put him in there somewhere. He's on that video montage. But the strangest one was I got recognized at work. That was the most unbelievable one. When a few months ago I got transferred over to our other office, and they sent me back to do interviews for my old position. And when I interviewed this guy, he told me, "Oh, I know you from somewhere." And I looked over his resume, and I'm like, I don't think we ever worked together. I don't know where I know you from. And then like a month or so later, I had to call over there to ask him something, and he tells me, I figured out where I know you from. And I asked him, where's that? And he goes, the Wrestling Roundtable. And my jaw was on the floor when he told me that. And he told me, I'm a big wrestling fan. I watched the show. I thought that was really cool, we have this little show. You think it's, nothing that big, when we think about it ourselves, but it's pretty big out there.
And I don't know about you, Chris, but I always feel incredibly grateful, and I'm sure you do, that anybody takes the time to watch our show out of all the things that are on YouTube, and for the people to enjoy it as much as they do. And one of the people who did enjoy it was Jay Aletto. And Jay, you started off as a fan, and now you're a big part of the show. How's this experience working out for you?
It's been great, Eric. As you know, I started watching the show in late 2008, and I was instantly hooked. I went back and I watched all the other shows previously, and I was looking forward to each additional show. And I believe I met you sometime in 2009 around spring at the ECW Arena. And,
right.
I got your email address, sent you an email, and before you know it, I was the first guest who was a fan on the show. And it just snowballed from there, man. Now I'm a part of the show, and I love it. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. And I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. You're a big part of the show, and I want to bring up Will Vafides. What's your experience with the Roundtable so far? Is it positive, Will?
Definitely positive. It's funny how, because me and Eric met while I was working, and we just had a common interest, and he told me about the show, and this is how I got into pro wrestling. It's just someone you know, and I just started doing it, and now I'm doing this, and it's good to talk about it, because, I don't like doing blogs a lot, because, text is out of context. I actually like talking about it to somebody, and this is a good way to do it. You can talk to people who are into the product and fans from all over the world, because there's different perspectives where you are or how you watch it. So it's good that we all have, a connection here at this one, place at Wrestling Roundtable, on Blog Talk, and on YouTube. And, it's going to keep growing, I believe. And I believe that our name is getting out there faster than it's probably ever been. I don't know. Eric knows more about that than I do.
Well, I think sort of like what you were touching upon is that the roundtable is like a big melting pot for wrestling and MMA fans because, like I said, different age groups, people have been watching different times, but it's also something to consider that people also use that time differently. You could be watching wrestling 20 years, but you've only watched WWE, whereas another person might have just used that 20 years to look at the independents and look at international stuff. It's a very different conditional thing, and one of the things that we've also done and that I can really attest to that is someone left a comment recently on YouTube that I thought was wonderful. They said that they had never seen the Shawn Michaels Undertaker Hell in a Cell in '97, probably too young. And when we mentioned it on the show, that put it in their mind, well, maybe I'll check that out. They bought a DVD set, I don't remember which one, a Michaels or Undertaker set, that had it, and they loved it. And that made me feel really good, that we could turn on someone to something that maybe hadn't occurred to them before they weren't aware of. And when we do different topics like Japanese wrestling, hardcore wrestling, or some more historical pieces like that per se, or career retrospectives, I think the door's open for that as well. But we've also opened up a lot of eyes to mixed martial arts. You'll see a lot of fans talking about how, well, I never really was into MMA, but you guys talking about it really interested me, and now I'm into it, and blah, 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 and that makes me feel really good. But nothing made me feel better, and the reason that I brought this up in the first place was after the Last Respect show, got a very nice email letter that I'd like to read to you right now, actually, from a guy named Chuck Jasmine in Winsted, Connecticut. And if you'll give me a minute, because it is a little lengthy, but it's worth it, just to give you an idea of what this show has done, I'd like to read that to you now. And he said, since I saw my first wrestling match in 1974, WWF, Baron Miguel Scicluna versus some jobber, I have loved the spectacle of pro wrestling. The weekly one-hour show from a static-filled UHF station in Worcester, Massachusetts, watching promos in utter fascination as the wrestlers built the heat for the next live card, coming to a high school gym near you. Seeing Bob Backlund shaking hands with Bruno, getting an autograph from Ken Patera when he asked me where he could grab a six-pack. Superstar Graham calling me a butterball before flexing, reaching up on my toes to shake Andre's hand. How are you, boss? As he stopped on his way to his car to drive to the next card. Stale popcorn, flat soda, and wrestling programs run on a copy machine. Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan took that away from me in Madison Square Garden. In the span of 6 minutes and change, my wrestling became multi-thousand-seat arenas, styrofoam fingers, and wrestling action figures on toy store shelves. The front row was now for celebrities, sports figures, and the, quote, in crowd. I found some refuge in TBS Saturday Wrestling. 2 hours of Ric Flair, Tully, the Freebirds, Arn and Noli, and of course Gordon Sully. But still, for live shows, it was the Omni or Richmond, the Orange Bowl for War Games. Then Eric Bischoff, as he wrote, and Vince McMahon took that away too. The Monday Night Whores and their Monday Night Wars. My addiction to live quality wrestling shows was limited to the occasional blood and beer fest called ECW. Their circuit came through a town near me every 3 months. Ironically, it was a bingo hall. But it wasn't, quote, my wrestling. It was chairs and tables and frying pans and hockey sticks. It was barbed wire bats and diving off balconies. But it was live, the soda was flat, the popcorn was stale, and I was, quote, home again. But Vince took that away from me, too. The foam fingers and glossy programs were back with $5 hot dogs, and the popcorn was fresh, and the ice cream was all shaped with wrestlers' caricatures. I lost my home again. Like many, I spent the next decade living vicariously through local one-night indie shows run by some group nobody ever heard of, where some has-been grapplers would show up for a payday and clusterfuck around the dilapidated ring with some greenie fresh from some wrestling school. It fed my addiction. The soda was flat, the popcorn was stale, and the hot dogs were half price before the main event, if you can call the Iron Sheik wrestling Jerry Lawler in 2004 a main event. I am writing to say, and this is in caps, I have been saved. I found Wrestling Roundtable on YouTube. Like a smoker with a craving, I caught every show. It was and is my, quote, sanity sanctuary. I can actually stay awake for most of Raw now because Tuesday night at 11 p.m., Wrestling Roundtable Radio hits Blog Talk Radio, and I can get my, quote, reality fix. Well, Roundtable Radio also brought me home in another way. I kept hearing about something called Pro Wrestling Respect. I knew when I first heard it, I was driving 4 hours to see it. I brooked no argument from my girlfriend or boss. A tank of gas, a pack of smokes, some flat coke, and I was on my way. Pro Wrestling Respect for me was exactly that, a return to the respect I had lost from pro wrestling. For every match, every minute of every match, it was unadulterated action. The wrestlers told stories in the ring. They worked hard and gave it all to the lucky ones who were there. I don't care if it was hot and muggy. Nothing was going to distract me. I didn't need announcers or glitz or stereophonic sound systems. I didn't need flash pots and explosions. All I needed that day was to see wrestlers who cared, a crowd that cared, and to, quote, come home for a few hours. Pro Wrestling Respect did that for me. The best part was, the soda was flat. You knew that was coming, right? It will be tougher than usual for me to get back into the grind of the, quote, Raw Impact weekly ritual after experiencing, quote, my wrestling again. The bi-monthly doses of Roundtable Radio will help. I just wanted to pass along a thank you and a well done to the folks who put in the time and effort to put on the Pro Wrestling Respect event and for letting me come home for a few hours. That was the letter from Chuck Jasmine, and I wanted to share that with you because between Pro Wrestling Respect and Wrestling Roundtable, I thought we're really starting to do our jobs. Wasn't too happy about the flat soda stuff, but really made me happy. And getting back to our jobs, like I said, talking about pro wrestling and mixed martial arts, we're going to start off with mixed martial arts because there were a lot of shows this weekend. Saturday was UFC, Ultimate Finale, Ring of Honor had Death Before Dishonor on pay-per-view. There was boxing on Showtime, Sengoku in Japan. Then Sunday was WEC and WWE's Fatal Fourway. But before all of this, the other weekend was UFC 115 with headlining Chuck Liddell and Rich Franklin. But before we get to the main event, there was some undercard matches I wanted to talk about. And one of them was the heavyweight fight between Ben Rothwell and Gilbert Yvel, which went to a decision. Looked like in the second round then that Rothwell might have been in real danger of having that fight stopped. I was pretty much expecting it when he was getting pounded by Yvel against the cage on the floor. But he came back and won. Rodney, thoughts on the heavyweight fight with Rothwell and Yvel?
Well, for some reason, everyone seems to be really shitting on this fight. I mean, you knew going into this fight that you're not going to have two world-class strikers and grapplers. But I think Ben Rothwell... Wait.
People were shitting on that fight? I thought it was a good fight.
I didn't think it was bad. Yeah, a lot of people really shit on the fight, how bad it was, and even Dana White in the press conference didn't comment on Ben Rothwell's performance. But honestly, I think he came out aggressive. I mean, yes, it looks tired, but yeah, they're big guys. They lasted all 15 minutes. Yvel, I think, looks the most tired. I mean, here's a guy who's been in MMA for a while and still has yet to develop a ground game, at least to be somewhat competitive, to get in some scrambles with Rothwell, even though he did use his strength most of the part, which was, basically using a big gas tank to get out of situations. But overall, I think it's smart by Ben Rothwell. I don't think he should be ashamed of what happened, and he got his first W in the UFC.
Jay, do you agree with what Rodney was saying about some people saying this was a shitty fight? Because I don't. I thought I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. I thought it was a really good fight. Ben Rothwell looked good. He looked like the Ben Rothwell I was expecting him to be coming into the UFC, but when he came in, he came Velasquez, and it was really tough to kind of fight a guy like that who's been really hot. But what he did against Gilbert Yvel was neutralize him. He just put him down and kept putting him down, kept transitioning to the mount position, wore him down quickly. Even when Yvel had that flurry when he was punching up against the cage, I think that the referee was hesitant to stop it because the way Rothwell got his fight stopped last time. The fight was good. Rothwell should be moving up the ranks soon. I'd like to see him fight a guy like maybe who we talk about next, Crow Cop or somebody along those lines. But I enjoyed the fight.
Well, you mentioned Crow Cop, and that is certainly going to be coming up next because Rothwell-Ivel is not the last heavyweight fight of the night. And the next heavyweight fight of the night was Mirko Crow Cop against Pat Barry. And in the hype to this, they certainly made it clear that Pat Barry was a fan of Crow Cop, but with only one loss in UFC and a pretty decent record aside from that, and a pretty impressive physique and fighting style from Pat Barry, coupled with the fact that Crow Cop really hasn't looked himself, at least in his prime, since coming into UFC, and especially since Gonzaga'd him, using Crow Cop's own high kick against him and breaking his leg, I believe, on the way down. Crow Cop said in preparation for this fight that we were going to see a return of the old Crow Cop. In fact, he brought back the old right leg hospital, left leg cemetery catchphrase, because he said the reason he hasn't been using his old kicking style is because he hasn't felt 100% comfortable with his kicks since he had surgery to repair that broken leg, which is why the past couple fights we haven't seen him particularly do that. In fact, he won the last fight on the ground, I believe, that he had in the fall. So going into this, a lot of hype. And in a way, the main event, I guess, unless for the diehards like us, I suppose, took precedent over that with Liddell and Franklin. And the story, of course, is Liddell and Franklin are both guys who are probably past their prime but still have something to prove. But Crow Cop, I felt, was like that too. And as it turned out, I thought this was, at least as far as MMA, moment of the year. Between the first round where he practically had his jaw broken and it looked really bad for Crow Cop, looked like he wasn't even going to make it out of the corner to make the second round. And towards the end of the first round where him and Barry pretty much marked out with each other and hugged about like, this is awesome. That was pretty cool. But everyone was into it, and by the end, who'd have thought in a match that was promised to be a stand-up, bang-up fight and have a knockout finish, that Crow Cop would finish Pat Barry on the ground. Now, of course, it may not be surprising to some, but that certainly wasn't what was advertised and expected. I was on my feet. I could not believe how awesome that moment was. I was very happy. What'd you think about it, Rod?
I agree with you, Eric. I thought it was a great fight. I thought Pat Barry, I thought Crow Cop was in trouble the first round. He got knocked down twice. And Pat Barry, I think, made the mistake of not capitalizing on it. I think he gave Crow Cop a little too much respect. I mean, it's great being able to fight one of your idols and finally get in the ring with them in the big stage of UFC, the Coleman event, on a card that's headlined by Chuck Liddell and Rich Franklin. But at the same time, that opponent is out there to hurt you too. I think that was Pat Barry's mistake. He could have hurt Crow Cop a little bit more. I think the second round, that's when Crow Cop started getting his groove back, cutting angles, and really started hurting Pat Barry. And Pat Barry was really confused. But yeah, who would have thought that Crow Cop would have got submission of the night, and he just went out there and proved that, hey, even though I'm a stand-up fighter, this is mixed martial arts, and he showed everyone that he has a ground game. And I was happy to see Crow Cop get the win.
So was I, but Chris, do you think that Rodney was accurate by saying that Pat Barry took Crow Cop too lightly?
I think he did. I think he really did show him too much respect because it is one of his idols. But I really think that Crow Cop did have his back against the wall in this fight, just like Liddell. If he would have lost, that would have been it. The UFC fan base, for the most part, the ones that have just been coming in lately, they never got to see the Crow Cop from Pride. So this was kind of cool to see, even it was a tap out, it wasn't the kick. There was always rumors maybe steroids in Pride or whatever you want to say it was. We never really got to see it here. And this is a guy that before Brock, he should have been the heavyweight guy. And it's nice to see him, even if it's just temporary return to form. Who knows if he's going to be back.
Jay, you're a Crow Cop fan. Do you think this is a sign that he's going to sign on for a few more fights and possibly have a career resurgence that he was supposed to have when they bought Pride?
Absolutely. Crow Cop was out there having a great time. I haven't seen him like that ever in his career, and I've watched pretty much all of his fights. He was having a blast, and it was really good for him to fight a guy that respected him so much that he can go out there and have fun against. Pat Barry, there's no way that Pat Barry shouldn't have finished Cro Cop in that first round after knocking him down twice. That second knockdown, Pat Barry should have been all over him immediately because Cro Cop was rocked. But the respect factor was there, and I think Pat Barry was way too easy on him. It was great seeing Cro Cop throwing leg kicks. He threw that axe kick that was ridiculous. If he connected with it harder, he could have even knocked him out. It was great seeing Cro Cop come back. I think he's going to have a resurgence, and like I said before, I'd like to see him fight Rothwell. I think that would be a good fight. And maybe one day he'll get a UFC heavyweight title shot. We'll have to wait and see about that. But with the resurgence of the heavyweight division, it's only good to have a legend like Cro Cop winning fights and being in the mix.
I don't see him getting a title shot. I don't see him beating a Cain Velasquez or Shane Carwin or, you saw what Trina did with him. I would see how he'd do against even Roy Nelson, because I'd pick Roy Nelson in that fight.
Yeah, Roy
Nelson got a long way
to
go before a title shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I agree 100%, but you never know with the UFC. Anybody can win on any given night, and I think we've seen that time and time again. So, it's great to see him in the mix, though.
Speaking of anything can happen, don't you think in a way that's what appeals to us, let's say, about MMA versus wrestling? Because when you got, let's say, Cena in the midst of a feud with Edge a couple years ago, or Randy Orton that seemed to not end, and we keep saying it's the same shit over and over, it's like it becomes routine, whereas MMA, anything can happen because it's not scripted. Don't you think that's part of the appeal, Jay?
Oh, absolutely, without a question. I think a lot of wrestling fans who liked wrestling during the Attitude Era have latched onto MMA as something of an alternative and have now become die-hard, hardcore fans and spend their pay-per-view dollars on that rather than WWE or TNA or whatever. So I think the kind of like the unpredictability of it and the mainstream of it with the Ultimate Fighter and ESPN covering it now, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Unpredictability, but is also the sports factor of it being real a big thing for it, Rod?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. I mean, MMA is basically what wrestling would be if wrestling was real. It's just really interesting just to see, you have all these high-level athletes. They're all trained. It's not like for example, now WWE, like all these independent wrestlers, they all go through the WWE machine so they could all wrestle the same way. In MMA, you have guys from all over the world training different disciplines. I mean, even though it's mixed martial arts, some people are stronger in striking, let's say, over grappling, and vice versa. So it's good to see, all these different athletes. Everyone has a different style, different personality, and it just makes for great fights and great entertainment. And UFC is excellent at marketing these fighters, constantly building new stars, and always delivering a great product.
It's great that, in WWE you see so many guys, they all kind of look the same. You see like a Randy Orton with the tattoo on the back, and you have Kennedy come in one after another. They all look the same. In UFC, you do have guys from all over the world. So rather than all the fighters looking the same, it's mostly the guys in the crowd with just the tap-out shirts and energy drinks and that all look the same.
See a question from Last Ride in our chat room about Batista and Strikeforce, but I'm going to save that for a little later because don't want to get too off topic. I wanted to get to the Chuck Liddell, Rich Franklin main event. Now, when we did our talk about this last time, we weren't really looking forward to it, and I got to say, even though I'm not a fan of either of them, about a minute into this fight, I was taking that back because I thought the fight was going really well. And unlike what we thought originally, where we weren't interested and kind of bored about the idea, after the fight happened, I wanted to talk about it. And the thing I wanted to ask to you guys is the obvious question that everyone was talking about the moment he got knocked out, and by he I mean Chuck Liddell in the first round by Rich Franklin. Should Chuck Liddell retire? I'm going to ask Chris first because he was your pick for MMA Fighter of the Decade when we covered that topic. So obviously you think highly of Chuck Liddell. Should he finally hang it up like everyone is saying?
I definitely think he should. Now, I like Chuck. I've liked him. I think like a lot of people, I used to watch UFC in the early years. It kind of went away for a while, and then it came back in this decade, in the last decade, in the 2000s. Chuck was a huge, huge deal when MMA became big again. So he was a big draw. He was the champ for a long time, and until 3 years ago, he only had 3 losses on his record. That was a big, big deal. And then you see these one after another. Since Rampage knocked him out in 2007, he's gotten 1 win over Vanderlei Silva. Other than that, it was losing to Jardine, Rashad, Shogun. And a lot of them were nasty-looking knockouts. Like, this is not going to be good for this guy's head and his body to be taking these hits. And after this one with Rich Franklin, I really think it's time. You don't want to see this guy. You don't want to see him be the first. I want to say guy in a wheelchair. You don't want to see this guy have a horrible like Muhammad Ali when he's older. You don't want to see that.
Well, that's what I brought up last time, that it seemed like he was on that way, and Rodney disagreed with me. I also want to disagree with the analysis some of our panelists had last time about Quentin Jackson saying he was not in shape. If you watch the countdown shows or the hype shows for these, you see these guys did get in shape. Maybe he just was away from the cage too long, but relating that to Chuck Liddell, he got in really good shape for this fight. Everyone was saying this is not the lazy Chuck or the Chuck that's drinking beer and dancing with the stars and all that other sort of shit. This was a focused Chuck. He was getting in there to win, and I gotta say, if he had lasted 10 more seconds, that fight would have been over. I don't think Franklin would have been able to come out of the corner with that broken arm, and it was a clear first-round win for Chuck regardless, up until the last 10 seconds. So with that in mind, should he retire, Rodney?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, people want to see Chuck Liddell go out on a win. People are saying they still want to see him and Tito because that's a fight that I think Chuck Liddell will win. But, I mean, I don't know what that's going to do for either of them besides maybe give Chuck Liddell a positive way of going out. But it's the same story that happened with the Shogun fight. In the Shogun fight, there were only a few seconds left, and that was a pretty close first round, I thought. And he got knocked out. I mean, it would be different if these last few fights were very competitive and he lost maybe by decision, split decision.
If he hadn't been knocked out a whole shitload of times before this?
Yeah, but I mean, when was the last time Rich Franklin knocked somebody out like that? It's been years. And to get really knocked out with a few seconds left, and he was really coming in too. Maybe it was a lot of, I think it was more of Chuck Liddell's momentum that knocked him out. But
yeah, it didn't look like a super powerful right hook either.
No, it was just really a short one. Rich saw the opportunity. Big ups to Rich Franklin. He got a knockout over Chuck Liddell. But yeah, after that, I really just shook my head and I was like, man, I don't know how much more of Chuck Liddell knockouts I could take. Pretty soon you could be making DVDs of Chuck Liddell getting knocked out.
So, did those few seconds make the difference, Jay? I stuck up for fighters' health, and they shouldn't be fighting at his age, and with such a weak chin, it seems. He's been knocked out pretty quickly a lot of times recently, and as good as he looked up until then, does the knockout make the difference?
I think it does. Dana White even said you'll never see Chuck Liddell in the octagon again. And I think if Chuck Liddell really tried, he could get one more fight. He could convince Dana White to let him fight one more time in a retirement match that they could have booked for a long time and get a big buy rate out of it. But I wouldn't want to see him fight again. I really don't want to see him get knocked out again and have possible brain damage because the lights are going out quicker every single time, and your lights can only go out so many times before you're done. And it was really sad to see Chuck get knocked out at the end of the round, and he basically just knocked himself out. Like you said, he ran into that little right hand and just put himself down. I'm a huge Chuck Liddell fan. I've always liked him. I was a big fan of his light heavyweight title run because I bought every pay-per-view, and he was just putting people down left and right, and it was so much fun at the time to watch that. And to see him getting knocked out every time out, is really sad. And I hope he's okay. I hope everything's good with him. He was in good shape. There's no question about that. And there's no doubt that he can fight again. I just don't think he will.
Well, maybe it's more likely that he'll want to keep fighting. Dana White will say no again, and maybe he'll end up in Strikeforce fighting Kimbo, or maybe in Japan in a freak show sort of situation. But speaking of Strikeforce, they're coming up on Saturday, the big Fedor Verdum fight. And it's a card that I'm looking really forward to because in addition to that, and I love Fedor, Christiane Cyborg Santos is defending her belt, and Kung Lee Scott Smith too. But the reason I'm bringing up Strikeforce now is because the question from the chat room from last ride was, what's everyone think about Batista fighting in Strikeforce? Now, to clarify, TMZ had a video from the Strikeforce show the other Wednesday in Los Angeles where Batista, seemingly goofing off, was asked by them, "Oh, you going to do some fighting?" "Oh, yeah. In UFC?" "No, Strikeforce." And the fucking shitty wrestling journalism you read everywhere, and MMA ain't that much better, said, Batista confirms signing with Strikeforce. And, of course, I'm looking at it like, you really got that out of that video. So, a spokesman from Strikeforce confirmed that Batista has not signed. He is in negotiations. They had a couple meetings. The rumor was a 2-fight deal, and he apparently has an offer from another MMA company. But that's something 40-year-old roided-up Batista is looking to get into. And the question from last ride in the chat room was, how do you guys think that he would do in Strikeforce? Jason Aletto.
It's tough to say, man. We've never seen him fight. We don't know.
Not. He would get fucking killed.
It depends who they throw at him, man. Like I said, in MMA, it could be one punch. Batista could put all his weight into one punch and knock somebody the fuck out. It's as simple as that.
But he would also not have to tear a muscle off his arm throwing it.
He probably would. I don't know. I'd like to see him fight. I'm happy for him. If he does it, I'm backing him up 100%. I know that Strikeforce would want to do the old Batista versus Bobby Lashley. It's now real. These two fake wrestlers go at it real inside the cage of doom, whatever the fuck Strikeforce has. And I think it would be a big buy rate if they did that because a lot of the wrestling fans will flock to it. So I'm happy for him. If he wants to give it a shot, go ahead. What's the big deal?
I'd watch it, but I'd also think that I'd end up watching Lashley destroy Batista. He's a 40-year-old former bodybuilder and has no real fighting experience outside of that ridiculous knife shit that he's doing. Like that is going to be practical in an MMA fight. But Chris, your thoughts on Batista potentially following suit to Brock and Black Lesnar getting into MMA?
I absolutely agree. He's going to get killed. Does he have any training at all? Are they going to throw him in there with like the MMA equivalent of a Rey Mysterio, a guy like 150 pounds? Who is he going to fight? Are they really going to seriously put him in there with Lashley? Lashley's much younger. He had the wrestling from the military. He trains a hell of a lot more than Batista's ever done. And even if Batista gets off the juice, he might go in there as a bantamweight. Who knows what he looks like?
Well, if he fights in Japan, he won't have to get off the juice. Rodney, your thoughts?
Like, you've always been giving me shit for being a Batista fan. And
deservingly so.
I'm always happy for my boy for...
Come on, he couldn't even beat Booker T backstage. What's he going to do in a cage?
Hey, he's interested in pursuing something he's interested in outside of wrestling. Hey, you know what? Good for him. But MMA at this day and age is not a place that Batista can compete at a high level. If you wanted to go compete in a smoke gym, just to get a few fights for fun, hey, that's good. But I think it'd be wrong for Strikeforce because I think they'll be really putting them in the position of being this organization to sign names just to have names. I don't think at Strikeforce it would be a smart decision to sign Batista and actually promote him as a legit MMA fighter.
If they do sign him, they are like solidifying themselves as the TNA of MMA.
Moving on to another UFC show on Saturday, the Ultimate Fighter Finale 11 took place. Jay, thoughts on the Ultimate Finale, which strangely took place after the Liddell Franklin fight?
First of all, I watched every episode of The Ultimate Fighter, so it's familiar with everybody, and I was very happy to see Jamie Yeager get his ass kicked yet again. That guy's a punk. He's good. He's not that bad. He's strong in the first round, but if he gets out of the first round, goes to the second, he's fucked. I was glad to see him get gets stopped with ground and pound. Keith Jardine and Matt Hamill beat the shit out of each other. That was a really good fight, I thought. Matt Hamill was able to bloody up Jardine really bad. I thought it was a fun fight, man. Those guys just went toe-to-toe the whole time. And the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, Court McGee, I was glad to see a story like that, man. And I'm a Chuck Liddell fan, so I'm glad a guy from his team won. I wasn't a big fan of Chris McRae, although he did pretty good on the show. He just didn't seem to have it on the finale. And Court McGee showed that he's a guy that literally came back from death from his drug addictions and everything. So it was a great story. I was very happy for him, and we'll see how he does once he gets a real fight, so to speak, in the octagon.
Well, that was the main event where middleweight Court McGee submitted Chris McRae by rear naked choke in the second round. Was it a good blow-off to a very highly rated season for Ultimate Fighter, Rod?
I think so. I think it was a pretty solid show. It was a good story for McGee. I thought it was a good story for him. I thought it was a pretty good fight. It's funny that both these guys actually lost on the show and ended up fighting in the finals, just to show, again, the unpredictability of MMA. And I think it's also, I like seeing middleweights also showcased, because I think middleweight is has the least deaths in the UFC, and I think just because of Anderson Silva cleaning it out, I think that's a division that could use a lot of stars, especially young and up-and-coming stars. And, I thought overall it was a good show, even though Matt Hamill fought with staph infection, but hey, that's all right.
I'm wondering if the main event of the next show was all right, because that was WEC 49 on Versus Sunday night, making their Canadian debut. And in the main event, lightweights Jamie Varner and Kamal, who, when I read his name, I think of Cabal from Mortal Kombat 3. Kamal! Shularis ended in a draw, and we all know how much people hate draws in MMA. Was it a satisfying way to end the night, Rod, or not?
No, I mean, this is a card that had a lot of great fights, and they had that place packed, and it looked like a really good turnout. But it's just really unfortunate that Jimmy Varner gets kicked in the nuts. And even though after the ref warned him twice, he kept going with the inside leg kicks. I don't know how. I mean, I honestly thought that he was going to get disqualified, but I give Jimmy Varner a lot of credit, because any man will know how much that will hurt, especially getting kicked in the nuts 3 times and continuing to fight. But after those 3 shots, a draw is not a surprise. I'm just happy the fight finished.
Also Sunday night was WWE's Fatal Fourway pay-per-view. And in every match that a Fatal Fourway took place in, the title changed hands. Thoughts on the show, Jay?
I would call it Fatal Boreway for the most part. Yeah, that's a good one. I wasn't a big fan of the show. I fell asleep a couple times during it, although I really liked the Chris Jericho-Evan Bourne match, man. They put on a good show. They did a really good job. I enjoyed the SmackDown Fatal Four-Way match. I'm glad Rey Mysterio won. He hasn't had a title run in a long time. We'll see what he can do with it. I think it's going to be a short run, but I'm sure it's short. Good matches. Yeah, exactly. Another inside joke there. And the rest of the show was kind of for me. I didn't really enjoy it too much. The angle at the end with NXT was very fucking predictable, which is the exact problem that's been with the angle lately. Is the unpredictability is not there at all. You could call pretty much everything that's going to happen with it. That was pretty bad. Sheamus winning the belt, I'm not too happy about that. I think Sheamus, he's kind of getting a little stagnant. He had a bit of a run for a while where he was looking pretty good in the ring, but his style is just not cutting it right now, in my opinion. And I thought The Miz was fucking funny, dude. He rapped on R-Truth, and that was pretty entertaining. But the rest of the show, for me, just didn't do it.
Why is it entertaining is always used instead of funny? Every time in wrestling, someone's entertaining. It's always because they're funny.
Yeah, I think they've brainwashed me at this point.
Well, that's what they do. But I'm glad you brought up Mysterio winning the belt, because it seemed like our message board, especially Pat, hated the fact that Mysterio won, because it's not believable and he doesn't fucking deserve it. Do you agree with that, Chris?
Absolutely not. I don't see it. Look, it's fake. We all know wrestling's fake. I'd rather see a guy like Mysterio. The WWE Universe is my enemy now. All 5 million of them. So, I really don't see what the big deal is. He's no worse than having John Cena. Look at how bad John Cena's offense can look sometimes. And then look at Mysterio doing the 619. Is there really that much of a difference? To me, Mysterio, he's only a champ. He sells merchandise. He's over with the crowds. I don't see a big deal in it. I'd rather see him than Sheamus. Like I said before, one of my top views of all time has always been Mysterio and Jericho. Whenever they go in there, I think it's good to have him as a champ right now. Why not? What if they're with Undertaker? When Undertaker comes back, they can have the blow-off match now.
Unlike last time, it didn't take a friend dying for him to win the belt. So do you think size is a factor in this, Rod? Like, should Mysterio not have it because he's too small and it's not believable?
No. This just like him winning the Rumble, I think if it's done right, Rey Mysterio can be, if he's booked right, if he's not losing every match, can be booked as a great champion. Obviously they didn't have any faith in Jack Swagger, so I think Mysterio winning is a good call. At least pick someone who all the new fans can get behind.
Moving on to other WWE talk, I wanted to retouch upon the NXT angle because the last time we did the show, it was the day after the NXT invasion. And there was a lot of talk, a lot of hype, and a lot of buzz around what WWE had done that first night. However, it's a couple weeks later. A lot of things have happened in between that time. And the main one, of course, is that what was probably going to be the figurehead, if not one of the figureheads, is Daniel Bryan, known to sane people as Bryan Danielson, got fired. And whether it had something to do with NBC, Mattel, Linda's campaign, either way, the reasoning was because of the portrayal of choking Justin Roberts with his tie and spitting on Cena and whatnot. And, of course, the Internet is up in arms about this, as you can expect.
The Internet got mad about something? Whoa.
I know. And as big as a fan as I am of Bryan Danielson, I'm not even upset that they fired him because obviously everybody knows at some point, either around when his 90-day no-compete clause runs up or beforehand, they're going to bring him back more than likely. So, yeah, it's a bump in the road for this angle, and that sucks for that, but people are just pissed off that he got fired because they don't know how good they had it because he was so great. And I love Bryan Danielson. I think he's one of the best in the world, as his nickname says, but at this point, as a fan, I can't get upset at WWE doing something stupid because it's just par for the course. The part that upsets me, however, though, is the hypocrisy of the idea being, of course, that we can't do anything remotely related to Chris Benoit, and choking with an object like that on a non-wrestler is a little too much for them. Yet Triple H and his boy toy, Shawn Michaels, can get away with doing that whenever they fucking want. I don't understand that, especially because that's the move that Benoit used to kill his kid. I've gone on and on about that during the show, so everyone knows my stance on that. That's the part I find a little ridiculous. What do you guys think about this, Rod?
It just sucks that Bryan Danielson had to be the guinea pig, and I think it really derailed the momentum.
Scapegoat, I think you mean.
Yeah, it definitely derailed the momentum and really took away from this angle, especially after all that happened on Raw. You have John Cena going on his Twitter begging for Danielson to be rehired. They said it could have been people from Mattel or Linda's campaign people. I don't know. I guess there are a bunch of different stories. I guess we won't know 100% for sure. But I'm in the same boat as you, Eric. I don't think his firing is going to last. I don't think we're going to see him in ROH. We're not going to see him in TNA.
We're definitely not going to see him in Ring of Honor. You knew how much he was asking.
Oh man, yeah, I definitely think that we'll see him back, and hopefully they'll bring him back in a great capacity.
Chris, what do you think about Bryan Danielson being fired? Would it just have unfolded just as stupidly as it had since then?
Maybe it would have bought them another week or two if he was still there. But this is going from 2 weeks ago where I said that I had nothing negative to say about it, and now it's the complete opposite. I have nothing positive to say about this angle. They've already done everything stupid. I mean, look back at the NWO. Imagine if 1 week into it they had fired Kevin Nash. Like, what the hell would have happened? There's just so much stupidity going on in that company, and this is the company that also screwed up the Invasion, everything else for the last decade. So I'm not shocked that it's already been blown, but you already have, McMahon was behind it. You know, why would they be fired? Nothing makes any sense. McMahon was behind it the whole time. I think it was more like McMahon was trying to take credit for it than actually being behind it. Oh, okay. And then maybe that makes a little, but still, this is just, it's ridiculous, and hopefully that the new GM is probably just Danielson anyway. Who knows? Well, that's probably their holdout until they can feel safe for bringing him back. How do you think this has unfolded, Will? He's one of the top guys for the NXT guys, or Nexus. That's what they're calling themselves now, I guess. Right. He's a good vocal cord. You know, he's a good vocal cord for that group. He's been vocal the last few weeks before leading up to what this became. You know, so now, if anything, he has a lot of control now because after being fired, they're going to want him back now. This puts a lot of control under Bryan Danielson now. In my view, it gives him power to when they want him back, because now they're going to need him back because he's a star, and he's not going to want, you know, TNA or ROH to grab him again, because then he has a lot of leeway. Please, they wouldn't be grabbing shit compared to WWE's money. Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying is that it's no contest. Yeah, I know that. I agree with that. I just think that my point is that they're going to try to grab him any way possible, but he also now has the control, saying, hey, well, if I do this, this better not happen again, or something like that. Because face it, he was ordered to go out there and do what they did. He's not going to be making any orders. Come on. Yeah, he can make it, but he has the control. Who said he has control? No control. They're going to offer him money, and he's going to sign for it. It's that simple. I say if you have fans behind him and all that, Vince McMahon's going to want to hire him back in an instant, and he's going to have a more superior role on the show now than he did before. Rather than Batista, maybe Strikeforce should go for Danielson. There you go. There you go. Well, I think it sucks for him for now, but at least it's given him a lot of leeway. I think the fans really are not happy about him getting fired, and he can come back and still he can either play the heel role, you can play the face role. So you can do either or now. Yeah, well, I mean, they were chanting for Daniel Bryan in the Nassau Coliseum at the Four-Way pay-per-view, and of course that's Northeast Smart Mark fan territory, so it's not to be completely unexpected. But I think we were pretty much all on the same page for the first day or so after it broke that we just thought this was another step in WWE's brilliant NXT angle, because when you see Daniel Bryan has been released, we wish him the best in his future endeavors, blah, blah. I thought it was the first fake firing they had done on the website, and I thought it was great. And then, of course, the details unfolded from there, and I believe if you read the news on WrestlingRoundtable.com, which is the only good wrestling reporting you'll actually get, I believe, we pretty much summarized the story pretty well for you, and I don't know if it sucks so much for Danielson per se, because I guess what Will is getting at is he's got a lot of support behind him now. He's right in the middle of a hot angle, a lot of fans getting behind him already. This happens. He's obviously the sympathy figure in this, and people want him back, and that does nothing but bode well for him. If they do sign him back, maybe he'll get a little more money, maybe he'll get a little more push. Your thoughts, Jay?
I think it's really simple. I think he'll be back basically in the beginning of the fall, end of summer, when the 90 days is over, and this could be the culmination of this NXT angle that honestly has lost a lot of steam since it started. I really think that if he comes back and just wages war against these guys, it would be creative TV, it would be good, it would be fun. He'll be back, man. He's not going to go backwards in his career. He's going to take a couple independent bookings this summer. He's going to wrestle a little all over the country, maybe even in Japan, whatever he wants to do. And he's just waiting. He's just biding his time until his 90-day no-compete runs out and they can legally sign him back. I don't know if they can legally bring him back yet. I don't know how that works. But I really don't think it's as big of a deal as the Internet is making it out to be. Big fucking deal. He choked the guy with a tie, and as a scapegoat, he got fired for it. It's never going to happen again. You're never going to see another person choke out an announcer with a tie. So for whatever reason this happened, He was the scapegoat. It was probably the right move in a business sense for WWE to fire him at this point. Not for the angle, but just in a sense where it's not going to happen again. He'll be back. There's no question about it in my mind, and I don't think there should be in anybody else's mind. I don't give a shit if people, like someone in the chat room, is saying that he wasn't booked right. Big fucking deal. Who does WWE?
Well, I disagree with that, right? But go ahead.
I disagree with that too. But who do they book right according to the internet wrestling community or whatever the fuck you want to call it? I think you got to give it time, man. He just started.
Jay, don't be so angry.
It's just been frustrating having. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. You just gotta take it easy, man. I gotta breathe.
No, I'm breathing, man. I'm just a little frustrated with how people are so negative. He'll be back. It's not a big deal. He'll be back. He was the scapegoat, and he'll come back hotter than ever.
This is exactly my problem that I even wrote the email to Eric, is that there's so much negativity going on in the world of wrestling. It's almost making me sick to even watch. So many people are just so negative on things. And he's coming back. It's not a point of they wanted to get rid of him. It was just a business. It was a business problem. They had to get rid of him for now, and he'll come right back. So it's not even, everybody's got to get over it. Start talking about what's going on next week. Don't worry about 3 weeks ago.
And there's a big money feud with him and Justin Roberts too. So I can't wait for that.
And
well,
the
3 weeks ago, those who forget the past, they never learn. But anyway, that was just Daniel Bryan, and I wanted to talk also about the NXT or Nexus group in general. And it seems as if a lot of the hype and buzz has died down. And I love how you guys, well, maybe not all of you in particular, but how some of you were talking about how fragile this must be, because the moment they do one little thing wrong, the whole thing's unraveled. Has it unraveled, Rodney?
To an extent. Just getting the reaction when they came out during the Hard Destiny match, I knew that, all right, these guys are still hot, the fans are still into them.
Let me spell it out for you. You were saying stuff like, if they come out on Raw the next week and cut a promo, it's done. And that's exactly what they did. And they've done things like that since then. So has the illusion been shattered for you?
I think so. Yes, they have. With them attacking McMahon has, I guess, kept a certain level of interest, but not the same as when it first happened. I think the mystery is gone.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much over when Santino chased them out of the building. That to me was just kind of like, this is fucking ridiculous. When you have car crashes and it's just typical WWE bullshit. It's just, they can't do anything right. I really hate to be negative, but they just can't get it right. We got to have people blowing up in limos, and we got to have, everything is just so stupid. Just make it simple. Like, look at just back to NWO and Austin, how simple everything was, and it worked. It looked real. It worked. And now we have just stupid bullshit every week.
Your analysis, Jason Aleto.
I agree with you, Chris, man. This angle has lost as much steam as any angle I could ever remember. Everything was so predictable at the pay-per-view. It was very predictable what was going to happen. Everybody, I think, with a brain in their head knew that was going to happen once they showed these Raw guys watching a big-ass TV monitor backstage. And just this constant attacking John Cena is corny as hell. The turn on McMahon I called 5 minutes before it happened. It's just, I don't know what they're doing with it. I don't know where they're going to go with it, but I just really don't like it. And hopefully they do something to make it regain its steam. I don't know what the hell they could do at this point, but I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
We're going to have to wait and see what we're going to talk about next time, because in a couple of weeks we're going to be back with more Wrestling Roundtable Radio, and in that time, Strikeforce's next show and UFC's big Lesnar-Carwin fight will have happened. We'll talk about those fights and much more in pro wrestling and MMA. So in the meantime, please visit WrestlingRoundtable.com. Get involved with the conversation. So for the panel, Will Vafides, Jason Aleto, Rodney LeConte, Chris Harris, I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you, and join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com.